I'm Cynthia, this is Mel, and we're going to have a chat today about those times in life for us all when the shit hits a fan and the real consequences of us ignoring those little shitty things that are just inconvenient to look at. And so we just sweep them under the rug and we let them build, and it might just be drinking too much, partying too much, spending too much, eating too much, exercising too much, gossiping too much, or the other side, it can be, not eating enough, not socialising enough, but the things that we do that disconnect us from our self-respect. And most people spend the second half of their life getting over the first. Now, when shit gets real, which, when there are real consequences for not looking after those details in our life, and many people come and work with me and they'll say, oh, Cynthia, this is such a petty thing. I feel so stupid. But when they unpack it, it's like a little cactus splinter, and it's the difference between good and great is detail. And it's the little details of self-care when it comes to our emotional well-being and our sanity. If we don't look after them, they snowball and build and build and build. And that is why we have Mental Health Week, and that is why we have World Suicide Prevention Day and Are You OK Day, because so many of us, it is easier to keep up and catch up, but so many of us just get busy doing, and we really avoid being present to those shitty, hard things that happen in life until a crisis comes. So my crisis, as many of you know, happened on October the 12th, 1995. I am a recovering alcoholic drug addict, and I've been clean and sober for 24 years, just a day at a time. But when I got clean and sober, I thought it would turn me into an appropriate young lady. Here I am at 57 years of age, far from appropriate, but my self-respect has been building gradually each day, month and year. I had to do a lot of work on domestic violence, sexual abuse, divorce, all that sort of stuff, and it has been I am a work in progress. So we're not sitting here today pretending we've got anybody's answers, but what I do know is the people that could actually share from a real place about what has worked for them and what hasn't really helped me along the way. And if I could have watched a YouTube channel at 2 a.m. when I was feeling like I was the only fucked person on the planet, and that the shame was bigger than bloody Ben-Hur, if I could have watched somebody else that was going through something similar, it would have helped. So enough from me. I want to introduce Mel now, because Mel has, and again, very grateful that she's volunteered her time. She's a busy career woman. But, we're all about on shit just got real. We're all about paying it forward and just helping other people out there, that are just feeling a bit lost. So, Mel, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's just start with, when it all sort of hit the fan for you and when you sort of realised you wanted to start to do some work.
Sure. I think there's been two big things happen to me in the last 15 years. My dad died overseas, so that was quite traumatic. That created a little bit of shit. But I suppose the big one recently was when I got divorced. So, yeah, all the little things that were building up just all came at me like a freight train, basically. So that was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. And for many people, a divorce is a death. It's a death of a marriage and of vows and of a dream. And, you've got to grieve. But if you've got a backlog of grieving from other stuff, and, you mentioned your dad dying, and then, anything else there that's built up under the carpet, it just you can hit overwhelm.
Yeah, sure. And that's what happened, I suppose. Triggered a lot of childhood trauma. The two men in my life were now gone, so there was a lot of grieving.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think when, people die or leave through the fact, whether it's a divorce or whether people geographically leave. I know one of your besties has moved interstate for a few months, and that, that was a little bit of grieving.
It's hard too.
Yeah, he was your safe person. But when those situations hit and we've got to kind of back ourselves and be on our own for a while, and I think when we are on our own, we often forget that we are okay. We can self-support. We can do chapters in our life on our own, but we often a lot of people say, I've forgotten who I am.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think I completely lost who I was. So the ability to do that wasn't there. So, that's why I came to see you, because I didn't have those skills to get through.
How long were you married for, Mel?
We were together 10 years.
Yeah.
But just married a few.
Yeah.
Couple.
And, a decade. I think the trouble is for many people that say, I've forgotten who I was, often remembering who you were doesn't help you anyway, because you're a different version of yourself a decade later. So, what pissed us off in our 20s and 30s is different in our 40s, and what our deal breakers and deal makers change. So often we have to sort of do a bit of self-study.
Well, it's like starting all over again.
Yep.
Everything I knew and thought was my life was not my life anymore. So, I felt like an infant again, I suppose, in some respects, with trying to put it all back together and work out a new path and a new way of how I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Instead of just, I suppose, when you're a couple, sometimes you get dragged along with everyone, like the other person's stuff, and you forget to look after yourself, I suppose. So, that's what happened for me, I think.
And for many people in a partnership, trying to find a line of where how to compromise without losing yourself and doing either a win-win or a win trade is not an easy thing to do. And when we're in big places of grieving, I know when I met you, your heart was breaking, you were just in overwhelm. And you've probably, if you've watched any of these other episodes, I often talk about when I work with a person, I first of all have to establish their top 3 weapons of mass distraction. Because when people are feeling quite lost and emotionally disenchanted with the world, they've disconnected from their source. They've disconnected from being able to back themselves and believe in themselves. I mean, we all remember, being hopefully we all remember, but, when we were kids, whether it's a little boy wearing a Superman hero, I remember seeing a little girl cross in the middle of the city with some angel wings on, and I remember tapping her mum just to squat down and talk to her, and I was about to go to a busy meeting, and then I said to the little girl with her angel fairy wings on and with her little wand, I said to her, "Sweetheart, you've just made my day. You are so beautiful." And she just looked back at me and said, I know. I know. She could, but we forget that we've got this enchanting world inside of us. We are wonderful as we are, and any relationship is a bonus. However, so let's just unpack a little bit. I always sort of like to, I share my dirty laundry as well without any shame. So my number 1 weapon of mass distraction was booze. My second one was marijuana and bit of speed. And my third one was nicotine. Now I've got, and these are, these all hit the pleasure centres because I didn't know how to build self-respect. So I just stayed in the pleasure centres that it made me feel better for a little while. But when you play in pleasure centres only, you often corrode your self-respect because pleasure in our brain is hardwired to be transient. So we get hungry, we eat, but anyone that's gone through a couple of packets of Tim Tams know that doesn't last long. You get, you want to get sexually validated, you have a great shag. Well, that doesn't always last long. You get pissed, you get stoned, you go for a run, so you get the endorphins of those things going. But if you're totally relying on pleasure centres, after 3 or 4 hours, it's kind of got like, well, what now? You've got to do something else to distract yourself. So what we're doing here is a little bit of what I like to call a passion project. And I know when I first met Mel, because she was so sad, we had to help her get her heart fired up again. Many people, when they're going through a big grieving stage, and Mel was one of them, get a pet because it becomes a beautiful little passion project. And a passion project is something that you do for pure joy, for play. It fires up your heart and it helps you believe in love, see joy and beauty, and it also builds self-respect. And that's a natural high. So passion projects give you a natural high. And when you're feeling sad and shitty and you don't like people anymore, pets can be great. So tell us about Max.
So I was very depressed and I thought, I really want a dog, someone who is happy to see me when I come home. So I went to the RSPCA on a $50 weekend and got my little mate.
So tell us about that. They have $50 weekends, do they?
Yeah, just to clear out the sheds, I suppose.
Of puppies?
Of dogs, yeah. So he's 8. So I saw him he was the only staffy there, which I was quite surprised about.
You wanted a staffy?
Yeah, well, he was at Wacol, so I would have thought that staffies would have been high on the list of dogs to get there. So anyway, I waited around for a couple of hours and he was still there while I was waiting for my name to get called out of the bin. So, yeah, but I purely got him at the start just so I had a reason to get up. At least I had to take him out for a wee or a walk. Yeah, so it was pretty basic.
Yeah. But I mean, when you are rebuilding, you've got to rebuild the foundations. And without, getting too bloody mung bean on spirituality, I mean, at the end of the day, if you boil down all great spiritual teachings, whether it's, Buddhism or Catholicism or Christianity or any of the modalities, if you boil down any spiritual construct, 12 steps are another one, it comes down to coming from a place of love, not fear. It comes from a place of construction, not destruction. But it's not always, recovery is not always about positive affirmations and pretending you're not sad. Sometimes if you won't and don't grieve, and sometimes we have cold winters where we do a lot of crying and we are under the doona and we are cuddling our puppies and just catching our breath and emotionally refueling, which Max, he was your bed buddy for a while, wasn't he?
Oh, he still is.
Is he?
Yeah, he snores and farts in bed like a man does. So, at least he's good company. And
is he very obedient?
He's very obedient.
Is he?
Yes, he's a good little guy.
Yeah. and so, as you sort of said, he gave you a reason to invest in love and invest in a relationship again.
Well, more life, really.
So it got pretty dark there?
Oh, it was purely basic. It was about getting up in the mornings. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember in those days when Mel came to work with me, it was about, as she sort of said, self-care. When you start again, it's about rebuilding and just checking your foundations and making sure that Mel was eating well and, getting outdoors with Max. So just getting back to weapons of mass distraction. Not all people are alcoholics like me, but there are some people that misuse alcohol when they're grieving or misuse food or booze or pills or sex. What would you have said your top 3 weapons of mass distraction were in that time? Things you used so you didn't have to feel?
Definitely booze.
Okay.
Yeah. A bottle of wine was only taking the edge just off. Like if I had 2, then I could sleep at night. So my brain was constantly on recycle. So I was doing that just to turn it off so I could sleep.
And can I just pause you there? The trouble is, when people are grieving and we talk about alcohol, alcohol is an anaesthetic, and like you're saying, it takes the edge off. So what alcohol does brilliantly is anaesthetise anxiety, but only short term. And then after that, it depresses the shit out of you because that part of the brain that anaesthetises anxiety, you're also anaesthetising your joy. So when you wake up, you're more depressed. Yeah. And what alcohol does, as Mel sort of said, I remember, my drinking days, you don't actually fall asleep. You pass out and you come to. It knocks you out, so you don't get quality sleep. So you can wake up feeling like a truck's run over you, not refreshed.
Yeah, so I was doing that in the afternoons and evenings.
Having a nap?
No, getting drunk.
Yep.
And then passing out and then just sleeping all day. So that was my routine for probably 6 months, I think. I was fortunate enough that I had a few savings, so I didn't have to go to work for that period. But I think I would have got fired in the first 3 weeks anyway because I was just a train wreck. So it's probably best just to stay at home and try and do something, I suppose. I remember just after it happened in the August, I think I texted you in November, and you said to me, I'm on holidays, I don't have an appointment till February. And I'm thinking, fuck, I'll be dead by February.
I'm so sorry.
But anyway, I suppose it was a good trigger. At least I knew I needed some help. And I found the right person for me. But I suppose having made that first step got my brain into a different gear to look after myself a bit better. So,
and sorry to interrupt you again. What Mel did there, and I always say, asking for help just actually reaching out and asking for help and you having parked that appointment, it's a bit like sometimes when we book a holiday, it's something to get to. And what you've done was do something, and when we actually reach out and ask for help, it connects us because, often when we're grieving, we feel like nobody else gets it and we feel alone. And sometimes, I remember when I was going through, I've had a couple of divorces, my divorces. And I don't say that with shame or, anything else. I mean, it's just, I didn't know how to partner myself. And so partnering with somebody else was only ever going to be short term because I wanted them to kind of, I wanted them to fix it for me or whatever else. But during those times of grieving, I've lost my train of thought, Mel. Where was I going, John? I was going somewhere.
Parking the appointment.
Parking the appointment. Yeah, asking for help. And what that does is it just sort of changes that feeling of hopelessness. Yeah, reignites the hope again. So when we did start to work together, and again, how did you get through that Christmas then?
I think I just kept drinking and eating and
self-medicating.
Yeah, just medicating myself. I think I went on antidepressants then as well,
okay.
So I think that helped.
Yeah.
But then I was testing those out with a bit of booze as well to see how far I could have antidepressants and drink and pretend to have a good time. So
you were trying to keep up appearances and keep going.
Yeah.
Now, we often hear that phrase, and I think the "Are you okay?" day is a brilliant thing. It's a brilliant question to ask people. So you were obviously not very okay during that time, but anybody looking on that didn't know you well, would they have picked that up?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I was pretty messy.
Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was angry, so angry, and I was not hiding it.
Yeah.
I wanted everyone to know how pissed off I was.
I remember when we first had our first few sessions, your anger was like, well, you were a bit of a Khaleesi, the fire-breathing dragon. What was going on?
It was pure. The hate was pure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, whenever I'm working with people and they start off and they say my anger's a major problem, the first question to always ask yourself and anybody else when they're angry is, what have you lost? Because anger is always about the grieving process.
Yeah.
And we get pissed off at things that we were passionate about that we lost. And so anger's not right or wrong, but often we confuse anger with abuse, neglect, violence, disrespect, and you're doing all of those things to yourself when I first met you.
And I thought, well, if the one person I loved didn't care, then why the fuck should I? So I went full on into it.
Yeah. However, you also have done a major U-turn. So do you want to talk about how that unfolded for you? Because I occasionally do workshops, and Mel has done a lot of work on, just on self-care, looking after her side of the street. One of the hardest things to realise is that we can't change other people.
Sure.
But the good news is you can change yourself, and you've done so much work on that. And Mel would, in one of the series of workshops we did, she would just articulate, which is what we're here doing now. And articulation is the capacity to talk about what's going on in your heart without any shame or fear, or without any blame, just owning your side of the street. And Mel would articulate something she'd learned or freely cry. Laughter and tears are the language of the heart. And I always say to clients with me, if you're crying, it's like working with a personal trainer at a gym. When you're sweaty, you're in the work. So if you're crying, something's healing, and that's always a good thing. And Mel would just fearlessly talk about what's going on in her heart. And I would have clients that were in that group weeks later going, oh, Jesus, I wish I was as brave as Mel. And Mel just nailed that. I couldn't say it, but she fucking said it. How do I get that brave? So do you want to talk about, how you found your voice and how you started to back yourself?
I think, I swear a lot, so that's quite cathartic for me, like a sailor. So I think I swore a lot in those sessions, by the way, so apologies, everyone. I think I just got sick of sitting in my own shit. And I needed help. And it's probably the last option I think I felt like I had, that if I don't say it now, I'm just going to keep churning around here until something else happens. I just got sick of sitting in my own shit.
You did spend some time working in a recovery facility.
Yes. So I went to what's it called? South Pacific Private. In Sydney.
Brilliant place in Sydney on the beach.
Yeah. So I committed to a month there with no alcohol, cigarettes, coffee, sugar.
It's full on detox, isn't it?
Full on detox of everything. So yeah, I think was shit scared before I went. I don't consider myself an alcoholic, but I was definitely using alcohol to numb and survive.
So alcohol was your number one. What would you reckon number two would have been?
Well, I was always hungover, so I suppose eating shit food that then became a comfort.
Like hibernating, so you could go hibernate and go to sleep.
Yeah, I just would drink and order Uber Eats from my bed.
Yep.
And I didn't leave the house.
And then what would your third be?
I don't know if I've got three.
Well, I said, from what I observed, and you correct me if this doesn't feel right.
I'm scared. What was my third?
Well, I met some people use sleep.
Yeah.
And again,
that was my best drug.
I actually still use sleep because it does reboot the brain, and a lot of people hide in sleep. But if if that's one of your weapons of mass distraction, it's probably one of the gentlest. However, people can, hibernate for a long time. And if sleep's your number one, that's a whole new thing. But I did notice that you were doing a lot of sleeping.
Oh, sleeping. I couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
I was exhausted.
Yeah. So,
just exhausted.
And again, Mel went to South Pacific Private. In Australia, there are some lots of amazing places. I was listening to Paul Kelly in the car this morning. You know that Who's Going to Make the Gravy, that Christmas song? You know how?
No.
I'll play it to you. It's a great song. Paul Kelly sings Who's Going to, I am old, Who's Going to Make the Gravy, and he's in jail, and it's the 21st of December, and he's singing this song about who's going to make the gravy because he's not there, and the shit's hit the fan. And then he sings another song, I think it's Paul Kelly, To Her Door, and he's just come back from the buttery. So there are lots of great rehabs and recovery places in Australia. It's not for everybody, and we're not here selling one size fits all, but we just want to share resources, songs, movies, things you tried. Some people will go to rehab and go, it's not for me. They won't stay, and other people think it's the best thing.
Yeah, so as I said, I didn't think I was an alcoholic, so I was a bit cocky about my status there, I think. But I think when I got there, there's a lot of people who are seriously ill. It is a psychiatric hospital, so it was comforting to know that I hadn't tipped myself over an edge, that I could see where it ends up, and to claw back from that would be very hard. There's a woman in there who couldn't hold her bowels together and just shit herself all the time, and
that's where you end up. Yeah. And I'll just pause you there. Me being an alcoholic, the day I got clean and sober, when I stood up out of bed, my bowels just, it just fell through me, and that's where you end up. And as I've said, when, for some people they're born alcoholics, some people cross a thin red line. There are a million debates on whether people are or aren't. I don't find that helpful. What I do find helpful is, and as Mel sort of said, and Mel, I've learned so much about people that misuse substances but aren't fully blown addicts, and Mel is one of those people that if you draw a line from 1 to 10, I'm a fully blown addict, no conversation, no debate, I'm that woman with the shit falling out of me. At 5, you've got social drinkers. Yeah. 5 and 7, between 5 and 7, you've got people that are often anxiety drinkers and emotionally medicate. And then from 7 to 9, you've got people that have had a trauma or the shit's hit the fan and they are really trying to just anaesthetize. And when I met you, I sort of thought 7.58. You were in that place.
I was probably punching a 9.
Okay, there
at
you
that
go.
point.
There
Yeah,
you go.
I was hitting it pretty hard. But the month at South Pacific Hospital was good because I think it gave me a chance to just relax and not have to do my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to clean. All I had to do was wash my clothes and turn up to the sessions.
And it broke that cycle of hibernating.
Yeah,
because
I had to get up. So if you've watched 28 Days with Sandra Bullock, that is exactly what it's fucking like. As you come in, everyone guesses what's your addiction, what's your drug of choice. There's a jobs list. Everyone gets a job. Mine was to wake people up in the morning for their morning walk, which I took very seriously.
Well, you've always had a strong work ethic, Mel.
Yes, and I was so good at my job that everyone asked if I could keep training the next person for the following weeks because I waked everyone up very nicely. When I was a kid, my dad used to open up the door and yell out, "Get out of bed!" And so for me now, getting woken up in a hostile manner just shits me for the rest of the day. So with my job, I woke everyone up in a beautiful manner every morning because it would make a difference to the way that you start your day. And there were a lot of issues that people had, and I thought, well, if at least I can make it nice in the mornings, they've got the rest of the day to fuck it up themselves. So at least I gave it a shot at making it nice for the community. And it operates like a community. So it's like a committee and the staff sit on one side and, the inmates are on the other. And but, if you put a whole bunch of really fucked up people together and ask them to behave as a functioning community, it can get pretty funny at times.
I always say, there's a lot of fun in dysfunction. That's why the word fun is in there. And, I suppose I'm yet to meet, people come to me and I know you were trying to convince me how fucked up you were and this, that or the other, but I suppose people that are actually really honest about what they're struggling with are actually riveting and really inspiring. And the educations I get from, the last 24 years I've sat with thousands of people and I am just in awe of the madness and genius line. There's, the way human beings survive, crises and turmoil is just, truth is stranger than fiction.
I think I've never wanted to be beige, so that was always a fear of mine.
In your pink leopard today, love?
Yeah, I always thought, oh my God, that's my worst nightmare. So, I kind of do appreciate my fucked upness.
Yeah.
Because, most of the time I think I'm pretty funny. So, and the stories that, that behaviour or those dysfunctions create are quite funny. I quite enjoy them.
And if you can't, what does Billy Connolly say? I think it was him. If you can't laugh at yourself, you're missing some amazing jokes. I might have been John Cleese saying that, And, it's not about, I know we hear, the art of not giving a fuck. And I think that there's a lot to be said for, just really doing some spring cleaning on what matters and what doesn't. However, there are some things where you do need to give a fuck. Yeah. You really do need to care.
Those things just shit me to pieces because if everyone went around not giving a fuck, then no one would care about anything. And I think it's those memes have just given people license just to be assholes. And I think if you can clean up your own backyard and, like Jiminy Cricket said, let your conscience be your guide.
Yeah.
I always think of that.
Yeah. And, is Jiminy Cricket like a little higher power?
Yeah, I think so.
He's beautiful, isn't he?
I used to love him. So I think for me, it's not about not giving a fuck. It's about giving a fuck about your self-respect.
Yeah.
And then other people's shit won't affect you as much. If your self-respect is, if you can validate yourself and be true to yourself, and live with a clear conscience and not be a prick, then hopefully that creates that inner strength where you don't actually care if somebody says something mean or does something to you.
Yeah.
You can see it for what it is and keep moving instead of taking it all on board.
Yeah.
Which I used to do a lot of.
Yeah, and I think when you haven't got any boundaries of self-respect, it's easy to be vulnerable to other people's stuff. And I think for people watching this today, there are some people that will be contemplating, should I go into a rehab or should I go into a health retreat or go and take some time out from the world? I myself, as a writer, I will go up into a ferry car, go up to Noosa or somewhere and just stay in my pajamas for a month and write. And it really does reboot my relationship with myself. And, unless we've got a bit of compassion and empathy and patience with ourselves, we're not going to be able to give it to anybody else. So, Mel, would you recommend for people, not quite knowing whether, a lot of people are very frightened like you were to go and do something like that?
I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just allowing myself that month just to have a break from my life. I mean, it was a luxury, really. How many people get a chance just to deal with themselves for a month and not have to worry about bills and everything else that goes with it, family, all the stuff. You can just focus on yourself for a month. And although I was scared, I knew in my heart that it was something I really needed to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a lunatic to go to a hospital like that.
You weren't a lunatic, Mel. You were just very sad. That was the biggest part of what was going on for you.
And I think, so you don't have to think that you're a lunatic to go. There's a lot of care and a lot of help there, and the people there are just like me. They're all people with careers, degrees. Supposedly doing okay, but falling apart. And just to see the change in those people, I can only assume that they would have seen a change
absolutely.
in me over that time. So, and I saw some remarkable changes in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
it's beautiful to watch people's, this is, people say to me, how do you do this work? It must be draining. I feel like I'm a midwife. It is a beautiful thing watching people birth their hope again. It really, it's just a privilege and a sacred honour going into rehabs and just running a little group where people are feeling like they're shitsville and then realising that, there's a formula. To build your emotional fitness is no different to building your physical fitness. It's not just for the elite. It's for anybody, and it's about getting the formula right. And that's why we're doing, Shit Just Got Real, because there is, the golden rule when it comes to recovery is there's no one golden rule. There is no one size fits all. And getting all self-righteous about this model works or that model works, people have to find their own way. Can you tell me, I love this one, but tell me about this one.
So after my month in solitude, I was staying in Sydney. So I booked myself into the West Inn in Sydney, for those people who know Sydney and Pitt Street.
Bit swanky.
It was very nice. Heavenly beds, because a hospital bed after a month, that was down.
Yeah.
So jumped in my heavenly bed, ordered from the Italian restaurant downstairs, had a beautiful meal and a glass of wine, and
took yourself on a date.
Took myself on a bloody nice date. So then I had a shower and got dressed, and Dior's just up the road. And so I bought my Dior ring as my recovery ring, and I wear it every day, besides being uber cool. It kind of just reminds me
of your commitment to you.
And kind of how far I've come since, in this 2.5 years. Even from then to now, that was nearly a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. So, and I think the other important thing is you can do a block of work, but it doesn't finish. I think I've been in touch with some people who I was at hospital with, and they didn't follow up with their self-care afterwards. And I think I've been pretty much the only one who has had wanted to keep going, where I think they thought they would be fixed after that. But it was just a real opportunity for a reboot. And there's still all the work that still has to be done. But that was just a kickstart to it, not the beginning, middle and end.
And I think you said a really interesting word there that I hear a lot of people say in recovery: I just want you to fix me. And I say to them, I don't think you're broken. I think you might be wounded. And you might be emotionally illiterate. You might not be able to articulate well, and that is talk about how you're feeling, and I can help you with that. But I think that's a really important point, because many people that want to work on their emotional fitness, and that is basically your marriage to yourself. And, that was my little wedding ring I bought for myself back in, when I wrote my first book, and was in my recovery. But I think your marriage to yourself, which is what Mel's just been saying, is an ongoing thing. And anyone knows in any marriage, you've got to keep doing the upgrades. And let's use a metaphor for physical fitness. You don't go to the gym just for a month and then I'm good to go. I'm fit for the rest of my life. I am fixed, and this kind of work keeps evolving. And if you want to keep being a better version of yourself, and for me at 57 years of age, people say to me, why do you still work with a therapist? And I go, well, because she's just a bit older and wiser. She doesn't tell me what to do, but I'm on my trainer wheels. My sons, are now in their 30s. I've now got a beautiful daughter-in-law. I want to be the best version of myself, but I get overwhelmed. And even just doing little passion projects, I was doing my bloody little anxiety wheeze and, you just want to keep evolving and being the best version of yourself. So every now and then it's good to just keep checking in. And, people that do this work in emotional recovery, Melanie, are expecting a quick fix, which is pleasure junkie ground.
Yeah, for sure.
This kind of work we're talking about is not a quick fix. It's the slow burn. It's the bigger picture. There's a beautiful saying, self-respect is the ultimate currency in life. It's the putting in the bank. Now, you just had a little bit of wintry time, in between jobs and, a few things go on just recently. And I know I saw Mel a little while ago and she was having again, just got into the session, rolled up her sleeves and had a torrential cry. And in the midst of that hardship, as I said to her, you're getting really good at coping with not coping.
Yeah.
You got to the other side of it.
Yeah, so I think because it is continual and because I am putting in the effort, the downturn, like the sales aren't completely going down before they go back up again. So they might
taking in water.
They might lose a little bit of wind, but my recovery in certain with certain issues is getting shorter.
Yeah.
So it still sucks us, but I'm getting better at picking myself back up again. Yeah.
And so your emotional damage control, like you're saying, when you fall down, you don't fall so hard and you get back up again. And Mel not being an addict, but somebody that was misusing alcohol. So can you just help people at home just with what you found works for you, just having to be careful at what you're saying, you're pushing a 9.
Sure.
Because what you've been describing to me, you back down around, in safer territory, maybe a 6 or 7 or something.
So because I'm quite social and still wanted to drink, I gave myself a 3-hour limit. So I told all my friends I've got 3 hours. So if I'm out at 5, I'm going home at 8.
That worked really well for you for a while, didn't it?
Yeah, and everyone respected that too. I didn't want to be that person who just snuck out the back door.
Yeah.
And, I'd been so open and honest about everything else that was going on. It wasn't hard to say, I've got 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'd had the dog then, so he was a great excuse to get home to. And I still do that now.
Yep.
Just I've had enough after 3 hours now.
Yeah.
I mean, before I could start at midday and come home at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
But
you were emotionally medicating then.
Yeah.
You don't need to anymore.
And I don't feel the need to do that now.
Mm.
So, yeah.
And how do you feel about men in relationships these days? Because you were pretty cranky with them when we first started. Didn't like them much.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're a heterosexual woman.
I know, it'd be easier if I was a lesbian. How do I feel about men? I don't know. Are
you ready to date yet, do you think?
God,
not quite ready?
No, I think I'm just enjoying feeling like me again.
Yeah, you're dating yourself.
That,
beautiful.
I'm really just, I'm determined not to let me go again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
As long as they can find me.
Yeah, and they will, yeah.
So as long as I can keep my side of the street clean, that's all I'm interested in really
at the end of the day, isn't that what we want in partners? You do you and I'll do me.
And we'll meet in the middle.
We'll meet in the middle and compromise.
Yeah.
So Mel, let's just before we say goodbye to our viewers, any music that really helped you that you're listening to? Well, what was the movie? 28 Days.
28 Days.
Yeah. Any other good movies that kind of
fantastic.
resonated for you? That were good therapy when you needed just to have a laugh or a cry?
Not so much movies. I remember, because I'm quite sensitive, I was watching a TED Talk about sensitives.
Which one? Who was that?
I can't remember who it is.
Just Google sensitivity TED Talk and it'll come up, go through.
It's a woman. I think she's Danish.
Okay.
Anyway, and I think, part of getting my self-respect back was even in the workplace, I always felt like I was too loud or too sensitive or too something. And this woman just articulated it so well that sensitive people do think outside the box, so they should be embraced in the workplace. And, we're not the people who turn off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll go home and think of new things to do the next day. And so we're never really off the clock. So a lot of us don't sleep a lot, but we're quite productive in those waking moments to come to work with new ideas the next day. So, it was great to hear it from a professional woman as well, not just some arty-farty who, can paint all day or whatever, someone in the corporate world. And so that was a great message.
TED Talks are amazing. You can just kind of put in any word that you're feeling and a range of talks will come up, so that's been good for you. And music? You played me a song the other day.
Oh, yeah. So the new Hilltop Hood song, Exit, it pretty much sort of sums up, I've just cleared out my cupboard with a lot of friends and social activities.
Yeah.
And so this song resonates to me at the moment because it's the video set in a bar and it's about not wanting to put up with everyone's shit and just keeping their friendship group tight. And pretty much the chorus says, I'm not here for a good time, I'm just looking for the exit sign. So, so I quite like that at the moment. It's quite funky.
And you give yourself permission to exit when you're ready. How good's that?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Mel, for your time today.
You're welcome.
If anything Mel said, Mel might come back and do another couple of episodes with us. And if you'd like to ask her anything, feel free to make a comment. Just always remembering that this is just a free community service. It's a little library of ideas for anybody that's, shit just got real and they need to clean up a bit of mess. And as Mel just said beautifully too, she got sick of sitting in her own shit. Shit makes got great fertiliser. I always think of New Farm Park. The rose garden in New Farm Park needs a shitload of manure to keep all those roses growing. And I always say to people, if you've had a lot of shit going in your life, I think it's Mother Nature's way of saying you've got lots of roses to grow. And what Mel and I are trying to do, who had shitty times in their life, just trying to turn some of that over, keep our internal gardens growing because it can be recycled, emotional recycling. You can pay it forward and help other people. So thank you for your generosity and your time here.
You're welcome.
And we might see Mel again. We might have, we might even talk about internet dating or something exciting.
Oh, gosh. No? I've got 1,000 stories about internet dating.
I think we might do that one next time. It might be the next one. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Please, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, share away. We'll see you next time. Lots of love.
Bye.
See ya.